All right, I'll get started here. Thank you all for coming to this webinar. This is for Transcend's Fall 2025 RFA. So just a quick overview of Transcend if you're not familiar with Transcend. Transcend is a clinical and translational research development, or CTRD program. Goal of Transcend: bring together researchers and clinicians across North Dakota to develop unique and innovative means of combating disease and other health issues in the state. Transcend is supported by the National Institute of General Medical Scientists, the NIH. And we have two grant mechanisms that we bring out each year: the pilot projects and the developmental, to effectuate that research with clinical researchers, clinicians. So we'll be going over those two projects today. So let's talk about the pilot projects overview. The pilot projects grant of Transcend is intended to provide support to allow researchers to pursue novel hypotheses, especially newer researchers, or at least newer researchers in clinical and translational research. We hope to support 4 to 5 new projects every year. The amount is $75,000. That's total cost, direct, indirect. It's a year-long project and hopefully an anticipated start date of July 1st, 2026. We've had 1 year already. I'm hopefully getting those going pretty soon here. And then so this is year 2. Applications for this pilot project should focus on clinical and translational research, unsurprisingly. Now, if you have a preclinical study, they would be considered only if there's a clear path to progress to clinical research. Our Transcend is really about clinical and translational research. We're not interested really in funding things that aren't that. Now, the developmental project is similar. We didn't do this in year 1 because these are larger projects, but now we're bringing these online. The developmental projects grant is for projects with existing significant preliminary data to support a novel hypothesis. These are bigger, and we're really targeting towards either prior grant awardees, so it's sort of like the second step, or individuals who may already have significant pilot data. Now, because year 1's pilot projects haven't started yet, those would be the ideal members to apply for this. They haven't started yet, so what will probably happen with this developmental grant for its first iteration will be individuals who have significant pilot data that are sort of ready for that next step instead of just the pilot grants. Now, these are larger, 1 to 2 we can do a year. These are 10 or 100,000 with direct, indirect, and this is a 2-year project. Same sort of start date, same sort of deadline, but they're just larger and they run longer. And applications should focus on T2 to T4 translational research, though if you had a T1 study and there's a clear path of progression, they might be considered. But really developmental is more for, you've already sort of established, you've done some clinical translational research, you're ready for the next step. So what is the eligibility for these projects? Well, you need to be a faculty or clinician at a participating Transcend institution, and you need to be accepted into the Transcend portal network. That's that second part, being into the network. That's pretty straightforward. You go to the Pathfinder site, you sign up. That's pretty perfunctory. Now, when it comes to participating Transcend institutions, typically what that means is you're a faculty member at UND, NDSU, or you're a clinician at something like Sanford Health. Though I think if you're not in one of those and you're still interested, we can talk and see if we can get you eligible. So fundamentally, this is for improving the life and health of North Dakotans. So you need to be at a North Dakota institution, whether it's a university, whether it's a medical center, or a hospital system. Now, investigators who are the PI, the principal investigator, can't have other NIH IDEA funding. So this is for investigators who are just getting into clinical and translational research, or or fairly new. If you have a major, NIH grant, you have a R01, R21, you're probably not eligible, especially if you have a current and IDEA funding. And similarly, previous Transcend pilot project awardees are not eligible to apply for a second pilot project award. Now, this really probably won't matter this year because although our awardees of year one are still sort of getting ready to start theirs, but next year, those awardees who've gone through this couldn't do another pilot. Now, they could apply for a developmental, but not a second pilot. These aren't meant to be sort of chained together. It's help you get started and then help you develop and move on to bigger and better things. Now, if you are approved for a full application, so you start with a letter of intent, that's accepted, you can do a full application. With a full application, there's some more eligibility. You're going to need to meet with our various cores. We have several cores that are meant to help support and develop applicants. So you'll need to meet with the navigator, the professional development core, the health research core, the research design compliance and data management core, sometimes called the R2D2 core because the acronym is so garbled, and the community engagement and outreach core. Now, later on, I'll give you core contacts, so don't get worried if that's a huge slew of cores right now. We can help walk you through it. And then funding, because this is for North Dakota, it must be used within North Dakota unless it's a special service cost. So like maybe you need to send out samples for some sort of special sequencing in, I don't know, Ohio. That should be allowed, but you can't like be funding another lab somewhere else or things like that. It should be spent within North Dakota. And if you're using patients or patient data, that must be from North Dakota. Again, it can't be working with patient data in, I don't know, Alaska or something. And then this is sort of the big sticking point when it comes to clinical and translational research. Proposals need to involve individual patients or persons. If they don't, they're not eligible. If you have a purely laboratory-based investigation that don't involve identifiable patient samples, or if it's just purely data analysis applications that involve anonymous participants, that's not eligible for this. It's really going to have to be clinical and translational research that involves human subjects. That might mean something like tumor samples from North Dakota patients. It might mean maybe electronic records from identifiable patients, but it has to involve human subject research. Okay, some important due dates here. So the letter of intent for these RFAs, both the pilot and developmental, are August 8th. So we sent this out about 2 weeks ago. It's due in another 2 weeks. If your letter of intent is accepted, selected full initial applications are due October 10th. So about another 2 months after the letter of intent is accepted. And a final submission to the NIH is March 6, 2026 with a anticipated start date of July 1st. And so how this works is you send us a letter of intent. The letter of intents we accept, we'll let you know. Then you can fill a full proposal. We'll bring those into it. We'll have external reviewers review those proposals. And then the ones, the top ones that we can select with the funding we have, we will send those to the NIH, and they will, go back and forth with us and make sure everything's set up, some revisions, and then final submission. So that's kind of how that works. So just looking at the calendar here, we can see that we have the 25th here. That's the date of this webinar. 2 weeks from now, on August 8th, Friday, the letter of intents are due, and then two months from there, on October 10th, you will have a full application. All right, so for this year 2, we have some priority research areas that our community engagement and outreach core set up and developed. They are found here in these green sections. They're also found in the RFA. And you can see they're quite broad. You can have everything from environmental exposures to sort of cancers of high prevalence in North Dakota and everything in between. There's a wide gamut from sort of pretty sort of cell biology or cancer biology and to more like social or public health. Now, we set up these priority research areas. If your research proposal doesn't specifically fit into one of those, that doesn't mean you're ineligible. These are just our priority. We want to prioritize these health problems for North Dakota. If you have a proposal with a problem that you think is relevant, you can still submit it. But really, in any case, however, whatever you submit, it's really incumbent upon you as the applicant to demonstrate the importance of your problem to North Dakota and North Dakotans. So if you submit something like, the effects of windsurfing on mental health, it's probably not going to work for North Dakota because we don't really windsurf. So that's not really a problem for North Dakotans or a solution for North Dakotans. So you're going to need to make the case that your problem is something that you can solve and it'll be beneficial to North Dakotans. Now, criteria for evaluation. So proposals, they're going to need to be relevant to our research priorities and the TRANSCEND mission. We saw those research priorities in the previous slide here. TRANSCEND mission to, of course, improve the health and life of North Dakotans. Hopefully, there should be potential for a path to extramural grant submission. We're really helping to grow clinical and translational research in North Dakota. And so we want to equip researchers, clinicians to do that research and help grow them to get to the next step to an NIH grant, an R01, R21, etc. Another evaluation is going to be the strength of the investigative personnel and any collaborators. Are they knowledgeable? Can they do the research? Do they have the equipment, the facility access, the access to patients, etc.? And then, just as you would a typical grant, there's going to be the significance, the innovation, approach, and environment of that grant. Now, some conditions for funding. If you are funded, you become an awardee of TRANSCEND. Again, you're going to need to be these projects are a single PI, no co-PIs. You're going to have collaborators, but just one PI. Can't have any co-current funding from other IDEA programs. If you're funded, we're putting together a mentored grant writing program. We'll ask you to participate in that. You'll need to have the normal administrative types of things like establish milestones, have progress reports, and a project completion survey, just as you would a typical grant. If there are budget or term adjustments that we need to do, you need to kind of work with us as these things arise. Big sticking point here, we have a annual TRANSCEND symposium. You're required to present orally at that. So we had our first one back here in June. Our one next year will hopefully be a little bit earlier, but awardees are expected to present at that. And then, any publications arising from TRANSCEND, have to cite the grant. You don't have to remember this whole grant title now, but if you're awarded here and you're pushing out papers, we'll work with you to make sure that this gets cited. So that's some of the background here. Let's get into what maybe you will be on your mind now in the next couple weeks is the letter of intent. So the letter of intent is where you can briefly explain the nature or focus of your research, how is it relevant to North Dakota, and how it might fit the research priorities identified by TRANSCEND if possible, or if applicable. Should have a description of the PI and any collaborators in the proposed research. Now, if you don't have everything all figured out, that's fine. For example, maybe you're a faculty member and you want to do a research and you'll need a clinician collaborator, you don't have one yet. That's fine. That's something we can actually help you set up, but you might need to lay that out of you'll need that and etc. Similarly, maybe if you're a clinician with a great research idea, but you need a biostatistician or some sort of help on that, just state that, and that's certainly something we can use. We can help you with. So the letter of intent physically is going to be a one-page, single-spaced, 11-point font or greater, half-inch margin on all sides. So really the take-home point is in one page, you need to explain your proposed project in a clear and succinct manner. You can save that as a PDF and you'll send that to our health research core coordinator, Savannah. And these LOIs will again be evaluated based on those criteria. Now, these are, for the most part, the LOIs should be pretty short, straightforward, unless it really doesn't fit, Transcend's mission, you're not eligible, it should be accepted. Only if things like really don't fit at all aren't going to pass. And LOI applicants will be notified the week of August 11th if they are invited to prepare and submit a full application. So you have about that full 2 months to put together a full application. So what goes into that initial application if your letter of intent is accepted? Well, let's start with the pilot. This is what we have in the RFA. It's, especially if you're seeing this for the first time or you're not really familiar with grants, it's a little bit daunting, but let's kind of break down what actually you need to do. So major pieces of your grant is going to be a specifics aims page. That's 1 page. You're going to have a research strategy. That's 3 pages. You can see there'll be a half page of significance, a half page of innovation, and just 2 pages of approach. So this is actually a very small research strategy. Then, to back up your research strategy, you'll need to have a bibliography and references cited. The other big piece outside of the research strategy, research plan, is going to be your budget. Have some sort of budget. If you're at the School of Medicine and Health Sciences, we have budget templates. Other institutions surely have those as well. And then a budget justification. So what are you going to spend on? How are you going to spend it? Justify that. So that's what I would call the major pieces. Now, other pieces and forms, you're going to need to have a biographical sketch, but hopefully you probably have an older version that you can just update. That shouldn't be too hard. Letters of support. So like if you need letters of support from your department head or clinical unit chief, etc. And then also like things like collaborators. Then there's some more of the administrative stuff like the form page. That's page 1, form page 2. You can see at the top here with more details. You're going to need a PH 398 checklist. And again, if this is totally your first time doing any sort of grant, this is really supposed to mimic in a smaller form an NIH style grant. So if you've never done that before, we can certainly work with you as core coordinators to help get you through this setup. And then there's some conditional documents that you may or may not need depending on your project, like other support documents, response to reviewers if you say had a resubmission, vertebrate animal section, consortium or contractual arrangements, a research sharing plan, or authentication of biological chemical resources. Now, so again, going back to the research strategy for the pilot, it's going to be just 3 pages. And that is going to lay out what you intend to do and how you intend to do it. Now, turning to the developmental, if you look at this here, it looks almost exactly the same, but the big difference here is the research strategy is now 6 pages. So this is a bigger developmental, it's more money, it's 2 years. So you need to expand a little bit more, have a little beefier project with 6 pages of your research strategy. All right, so some other requirements. Now, if you need an IRB, IBC, or IACUC approval for your project, you're going to need to have that approval secured before the final application to NIH and include letters verifying approval. Now, for the initial applications that you'll send into TRANSCEND, you don't need to have that secured, especially, not going through all those hoops in case you don't even get approved to be an awardee. Your project doesn't get selected, but we do suggest that you at least have it drafted so you sort of have something started, ready to go, so that if you are awarded, we can help get you through that, get that finalized before we hand it off to the NIH. Now, proposals recommended by the TRANSCEND review panel. So again, TRANSCEND will take the initial applications, we'll send it out to external reviewers. will require approval by the NIH prior to initiation. So we don't, we'll, based on our external reviews, we'll select the top ones and recommend them for funding, but the NIH sort of has the final say. Now, typically what that means is they'll ask for some revisions back and forth, clean things up, but really the ones we suggest to them, they're going to fund or allow us to fund. Now, some other specific requirements: studies with human subjects, which really should be all of them. You're going to need, a written protocol with the risk and protections for human subjects, according to the NIH's plan. You're going to need an IRB, so Institutional Review Board approval. You're going to need to do human subjects training through CITI if you haven't already done that. And again, if you haven't, we can work with you on any of these checkpoints. You'll need an inclusion data record and then enter it into the inclusion management system. And then if you're doing specifically a clinical trial, so pretty much I would say all clinical trials have human subjects, but not all human subjects have clinical trials. So with a clinical trial, you're going to need to have specific plans for data and safety monitoring, and then do good clinical practice course through CITI program. And then if you're working with vertebrate animals, now typically a study, you can't really do just vertebrate animals, but perhaps you would have a proposal where you do vertebrate animals and then a human component, or perhaps like a PDX, a patient-derived xenograft model, where you're using identify human tumor samples from North Korea patients and putting them in mice. That might fit. If you're doing vertebrate animals, you'll need to use, in addition to things like IACUC, you'll need animal care education courses through CITI program. Now, I went through a lot here, especially if this is your first time, you're sort of just getting into this. One of the big points of Transcend is to help support you, is to help get your feet wet, get you kind of through this process, help you succeed. So we have a huge realm of support for you. So first of all, there's the Health Research Core, which does a lot with actually sending out these requests for applications, getting the application documents, etc. The core coordinator for that is Savannah, actually on the call here today. There's the Research Design, Compliance, and Data Management Core. Miranda and Mitchell are core coordinators. They're also project managers for Sanford. So they're really do a lot of the heavy lifting for helping people work with human subjects, working with clinicians, etc. Do great work there. Kent and I are more on the data side, the more the analysis side. Kent is a database navigator, can help you with database issues. I'm a statistician, so like if you need help with experimental design, sample size, statistical analysis, either planning for it or actually running it when you're awarded, I'm here to help. We have the Professional Development Core. Jamie does a lot actually in several cores, but she's the Transcend Navigator. She's really often the first contact point or the person who helped connect you to everyone to make sure you get what you need. There's the Community Engagement and Outreach Core, especially helpful if you're doing community-based projects or you need to do things like that. Brian is the core coordinator there. And then on the administrative side, Nikki or Nicole is the Transcend project coordinator. So just sort of give you a feel for like what we funded in year one, to get a taste for like what sort of projects might be feasible or workable. We had AI-powered risk prediction to improve outcomes in transcatheter aortic valve replacement. Exploring physical and mental effects of victimization among women in North Dakota. Social and effective neuroscience of loneliness. Promoting radon testing among mothers of infants, a translational clinical trial. Identifying the key rewards and punishment processes maintaining anorexia nervosa. Molecular profiling of CD8 plus T cells in the tumor microenvironment to overcome immune evasion. Impact of pharmacogenomic testing on medication outcomes in long-term care, and evaluation of the impact of a methadone medication dispensing unit in a North Dakota community pharmacy. So you see there's quite a wide gamut. We have sort of pharmacy-based studies, more like psychological studies, sort of community-based studies, more of them maybe like the lab, like cell biology, cancer biology, even looking at using machine learning, looking at medical imaging. So I'd say a fair gambit of different approaches you can do to clinical and translational research for North Dakotans. So with that, I'll kind of close with a couple frequently asked questions that I thought of and try to answer, and then there'll be more time for questions here. And it looks like there's been some questions in the meeting chat that we can make sure to get to if they haven't already been answered. So first FAQ, who reviews LOIs and applications? So for the letters of intent, the LOIs, the Health Research Corps will review those. And again, it's pretty basic. Like unless your proposed project really isn't clinical and translational research, or as a PI you really aren't eligible. You have a large grant already, or aren't from a North Dakota institution, etc. We're probably going to accept it. We maybe have some back and forth if we're not quite sure if it fits, but it's a fairly broad inclusion criteria. Now, for full applications, the cores, we don't actually review them ourselves. So we're really here, the core coordinators are here to help you develop the best project you can. We will send out your application to external reviewers who will be experts, will be people who can review these, give scores, just like you would, very similar to what NIH would do. And we'll get those reviews back from those external reviewers, and then we'll pick the most highly scored grants from there, or applications from there. Now, another question, how can I get connected to a collaborator? Well, we have our Pathfinder program where people, you can sign up and then put your expertise, your availability, and you can actually search that when you've signed up. So you can look for maybe a clinical collaborator or a collaborator in a specific field. And you can also talk with us. You can connect with the core coordinators, and we can see if we can connect you to someone. Another one, do I need to have an IRB approved or IACUC or IBC, etc., before submitting? So no, but we do ask that you have any of those approvals at least drafted. So if you are approved, your project does move forward, we can get that finalized in a timely manner before final submission to the NIH. Okay, final one. How can I tell if my project is considered clinical and translational research? So I would say the rule of thumb is, and again, we talked about this earlier, is it really needs to involve identifiable humans. So that might be something like tumor samples from patients. Maybe you're actually doing like a behavioral survey. You're asking people, about their health before and after an intervention. And maybe you're even doing a bona fide clinical trial. That'd probably be the gold standard, though it doesn't certainly need to be quite that much. And if you're unsure, please reach out to us, connect to a core coordinator, and we can walk through it, see if we can maybe, if it isn't quite there, we can find a way to have your project fit what we're able to fund. All right, with that, that's the end of the slides here. I can take some time here for questions. Maybe we could start with the meeting chat. Has everything been answered so far? Okay. Okay,
I
so
think the only thing was that I wasn't completely sure about non-US citizens, particularly in the PI position. I know it's okay for, say, student workers. I don't know if Dr. Schwartz or Nikki have more input.
I think we'd have to check on that, Savannah. It's a good question. Um, I think if somebody, and I would need to verify this, but I think if the PI is eligible because she or he is a faculty member at a North Dakota-based institution, that would probably cover them. However, I would add, because it's a sensitive issue and it has actually come up in other CTRDs, you want to be careful about proposing a topic that does not run afoul of present governmental sensitivities. That's a very awkward way of saying Um, if you come in with a proposal on, say, to take a very clear-cut example, transgender care, I know from experience that other universities have had pilots on those that were deemed to be meritorious at the proposal level, but the NIH says we do not fund that. So you want to be careful about picking a topic that is not on the list of sort of forbidden, for lack of a better term, topics. It would be a waste of time to come in with um, a topic, say, on racial bias in no, because I don't want somebody to spend a lot of time working on one of those things only to be told later that it doesn't meet NIH criteria for um, fundable projects. So I want to be clear about making a distinction between um, appearing to agree with some dictates and just simply sort of common sense that don't be insensitive to what the present climate is. But with respect to the initial question about whether the PI herself or himself needs to be a citizen, I don't think that's an issue. I will confirm it though, and we will get back to everyone.
Thank you, Gary. So the study I was thinking about is chronic disease management and wearables in a rural North Dakota population. So it's not a politically sensitive topic, but I had faculty that are interested that are not U.S. citizens. So that's where the question is coming from.
Thanks. It's a good one because it would probably come up again. And again, what we're really trying to do here, the goal of Transcend is to increase the pool of individuals who are seen as um, capable of conducting clinical and translational research. And the NIH has a very clear definition of what that is. According to the NIH, an independent investigator, and the goal is to increase the population of such persons, is somebody who herself or himself is successful in applying for extramural NIH research. And that is the criteria by which Transcend will be evaluated for future years. We have 4 years of funding left, which is very exciting. But what's really great about this opportunity for the medical school and for the university is that Transcend would be eligible to be renewed twice. So really, we want to help everyone, and helping people get ahead helps Transcend move forward.
Okay. And then, yeah, Savannah put some stuff from the NIH a little bit more about um, eligibility based on affiliation or citizenship. And I think that probably covers one of the related questions about permanent residents be eligible. Another question that came up is, does everyone on the application need to have accepted to Transcend membership through the portal? I would say no. I mean, especially if it's like student or like minor collaborator, but like if it's like PI, COI, like major ones, you I think would need to be. It's pretty, like I said, it's pretty minimal. You just register, and then we'll if you have a actual email that looks legitimate, from UND, Sanford, NDSU, an actual university or institution email, we're going to accept that. It's pretty much automatic. If you have like a researcher or collaborator that maybe doesn't have one, maybe just reach out to us personally, and then we'll make sure that that will go through. Other questions at this point?
I have one.
Yeah.
May I ask, drug development and clinical trial, does pilot grant encourage faculty who into drug development and have some good results, but not in the stage where clinical research can be done. So do you what Transcend stand there for those faculties?
Maybe could you clarify like what type of research, like are you just talking
So
about like research that's just at the like cell culture level or just the animal model level?
yeah, the in vitro level and in almost the animal level, yeah. But not drug has not been patented yet, but in the process of patenting. So
Yeah, I think again going kind of back to the, let's see if I can go back to the slide. That would fall under, I think, so under the pilot, where was I? So it'd be something with like this preclinical studies.
mhm.
Consider only if there's a clear path to progress to clinical research. So that's possible. I don't think that would be um,
I would
preferable.
just add,
Yeah.
yeah, that if it's not working with human subjects, it's going
Hmm.
to be very low um priority for consideration to move
Hmm.
forward.
Yeah. Yeah. I would discourage applications that were preclinical. Um, yeah.
Thank you.
Hmm. Any other questions?
Mark, I would just add, thank you very much for that very clear presentation. The goal of Transcend and everyone who's involved in it is actually to help you. So if you have questions about, well, here's what I'm thinking of, is there a way to make this fit? We will try and help you make it fit. We're not here to sort of pass judgment on it and say, no, you're good. Yes, this will, or conversely, this will not work. If you have an idea about improving health conditions in North Dakota and you want to figure out how to find somebody who will work with you or how to refine it in a way that would make it eligible, contact Mark, contact me, contact Savannah, anyone who is listed on the portal, and we will actually do our best to work with you to get you to the next level. So we're here to be your allies. We're not here to be to judge anything as well, this is good, this is not good. What's good is something that helps people.
Mhm.
And so please keep in mind that we're very eager to get questions from you. We're very eager to try and target you in the right direction. And the best way to get started, if you haven't already, is to register in the portal or to contact Mark or Savannah or Nikki or myself.
Yeah, I'll throw a link to the portal up in the core here, and I already see some registrations that I'll try to approve here pretty soon. But what is it in the chat? And then it looks like as we were talking, there's another question in the chat about if an applicant needs a clinical court collaborator, but they don't have one yet, you can, yeah, certainly still submit an LI, sort of line that up, and that's one of the things we can help with. Try to match you with a clinical collaborator to submit your full application. So, okay. Well, with that, I think, oh yeah, Savannah mentioned Jamie. She's the navigator, specifically help with finding collaborators. That's one of her jobs. So A lot of support here for your projects.
I have a question regarding the Jamie's email. On the screen, her email said that at usd.edu. Is that correct?
That is,
It is
yep, that
correct.
is correct.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
she is based out of South Dakota.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, but she is a member of Transcend. Yeah, Transcend is the successor to Dakota, which actually was North and South Dakota. So we used to be spanning both states. We still have some coordinators, some people on our team that are still from South Dakota, though we're now just primarily North Dakota based when it comes to research and projects we can fund.
Okay. Thank you. And while my mic is on, can I ask you another question?
Absolutely.
I'm a core director for a core that is supported by Cobra right now. Is that considered like an idea program supported?
See.
I'm not a PI.
Mm-hmm. I don't know that off the top of my head. My gut would be say no, but I don't know for sure.
Okay. And if you currently have a NIH funded grant, would that still be eligible?
Anyone else
Kumi,
can?
it depends what the grant is on.
Yeah, I think
If you
like
have a
it-
laboratory,
It is not idea program, and it's preclinical, completely preclinical.
I think you would be eligible because,
Okay.
as I said, the goal is to grow the pool of individuals capable of conducting clinical and translational research. So if you are a funded laboratory investigator, you could make the case that yes, you're glad to work with rats or mice, but really you see your work moving into the clinical translational realm, which involves humans. So you could therefore apply for a clinical translational research grant by leveraging your biological experience working with laboratory animals.
Okay.
You would be ineligible if you had, say, an NIH grant that was already CNT research, because then you were already seen as a CNT researcher, and
I
that there's
see.
no way that the grant could claim credit for converting you into one.
Right. Okay. Got it. Thank you.
Okay, well, I think we'll close out here. Thanks everyone for joining us. Again, if you have any additional questions, comments, certainly reach out to us. Yeah, there we go.